Hi, Dominique, and welcome to another edition of The Week Ahead. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you, Andrew. Ready for a nice weekend.
Okay, that's funny. I was just talking to one of our clients, and she was saying the same. Long week. I think it was a long week for a lot of people. Um, well, let's dive right in. And just a quick timestamp that this is post a lot of big PCE, personal income, personal spending data out of the US on Friday. So it's about almost 2:30 US time on Friday. So yeah, as always, what are your big takeaways from this past week? Price action, speeches, data, etc., market reaction.
So, last week we said this week was going to be quiet, and I think it was. The PCE core month on month, which was really the key data of the week, was 1 basis point below the Fed prediction. So, no, nothing to get excited about. I think the
As
excitement
Sam's model had predicted. Core, yes.
very important, yes. Um, uh, so, um, so the excitement is ahead of us. I,
What
I
about
really,
personal income, personal spending? Is that anything, or you don't think it's a big
oh,
deal? We
well,
haven't talked about it that much, but yeah.
so it was right as expected. The savings rate, I think, fell a bit.
It shows
The
it was a bit lower. It was like income was supposed to be 0.4 and it came in at 0.2.
Yeah, but real personal spending was zero point 0.1 as
Ah,
expected.
fine. I see. Yeah.
And that data, you need to look at the 3 months average. Things just move very slowly in economic time, and it still look good. I mean, to be honest, all the excitement is ahead of us, in the sense that I mean, we've gone, in a way, we've gone through a period where the Fed has been extremely lucky. You've had strong growth, falling inflation, which is typically what happens when you have a positive supply shock. And I think we may be about to see the end of the positive supply shock. Uh, Immigration was a big part of it. Of course, you had the supply chain story, but if you look at what drives inflation, it's much more services, so wages and the labor market, than goods prices. And the Fed was super lucky with its, with the huge increase in immigration.
Right.
And this has changed.
To be fair, to fight inflation, I mean, there could be, people could debate that the secondary effects are worse or not, or so we're not making a political statement, but in general, the Biden-Harris administration to bring down inflation, that was actually probably a fairly decent call.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to look at the balance of luck and skill, I mean, with the benefit of hindsight, obviously, so it's a bit unfair, but that second stimulus package we had,
Yeah, that was completely unnecessary.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
And so the Fed had to mop up, but the Fed, I think, was helped by this huge increase in immigration, which, by the way, was also positive for growth. I mean, supported supply, but demand, because typically what happens is when consumers binge, as they did in 2021, bought all these durable goods, you have a period when they kind of fast. I mean, they
A
spend,
hangover.
yeah, exactly. Could I be speaking to an expert?
Yeah.
But yeah, you have the hangover, and that's when you have negative growth. And we didn't really get that. And I think it's because of immigration. But the thing is, we could be about to see a change of regime, of inflationary regime. I mean, if immigration played a big role in wage moderation, that may be about to end. And so the pattern of very large NFP, rising unemployment, and low wage growth could be about to reverse itself. If so, it could get a little trickier for the Fed. And that's what we find out. We start to find out with next week NFP. So in that sense, it's quite important. Now, in terms of the quality of the signal we are going to get, of course, there is the data is noisy in itself, but then you have all the impact of those hurricanes. There was one that hit during the survey week. So it may take a few months to get a clear
Sounds
signal.
yeah.
And of course, the elephant in the room in terms of the regime, the macro regime, the Fed has to face is the election. I mean,
Right. Let
um,
me ask you a question, just before we go ahead to kind of forward thinking for next week. But are you surprised? I just killed my Bloomberg. Are you surprised that the 75? So at least I guess let's say another 50 and then 25 in December. Are you surprised that that is still being priced in, even though the data is roughly okay?
so the
I mean,
growth
you could say
data,
payrolls is even. I mean, we'll get payrolls next week, but the general job data, the numbers looks pretty
unemployment
decent.
claims, yeah.
Yeah.
So, that was always the risk with doing 50 out of the gates, that the market would love to extrapolate its 50 all the way. And so the disappointment that the negative market reaction the Fed would have had if they'd done 25, it might get it this time around if it does only 25. And if the NFP is half decent and we get another decline in unemployment, I think they'll go 25.
Okay, so it's really gonna be about okay, fine. So let's think. So next week, what should everyone look out for, and what are you leaning? I guess you're gonna wait. You'll make a like your main assessment after next Friday.
Yeah, I mean, I'm coming into the NFP expecting a decline in the unemployment rate, probably headline number around 100,000. But if you look, unfortunately, with this whole immigration business, there is very little data going
Right.
around. I mean, the Fed has its estimate, the CBO has its estimate, but there is no official data, especially not from the Census Bureau, which is the most important one because this is what the BLS uses to compute all the levels I mean, this is basically the civilian population estimate of the Census Bureau, is what the BLS uses to compute all the estimates of employment and so on and so forth in the household survey. So very little data to go by, but if you look at the Department of Homeland Security data on what they call border encounters, which are basically the border patrol, the number of times the border
Yeah, I
patrol
saw
has
your.
stopped,
Yeah, it was cool.
it's
Yeah.
down. And also, there is a lot of anecdotal data in the newspaper about the flows of migrants drying up. Um, so that's why I'm thinking, we're likely to get
So
less.
just explain it. The effect on the unemployment rate would be how? Just
Ah,
yeah.
so this is one thing I discussed in this week's webinar. So I hope readers will have a look at our slides. But traditionally, foreign unemployment is lower than American-born unemployment. But what happened in 2022 is that actually the foreign unemployment rate started to rise above the American-born unemployment rate. And I think it just reflects the fact that foreign born were not just, people who had been not US born, but in the US for some time, established, those people who tend to be less unemployed than American born. You had a new inflow of migrants with lower skills, perhaps lower linguistic skills as well. And those people took longer to find job. And so you had
But
an increase.
but do they go into the official statistics?
Yes, they do. I mean, though I think they are undercounted because the BLS does a survey,
Okay.
basically. Um, and from the surveys, they compute ratios which they apply to the population numbers provided by the Census Bureau. But obviously, in the survey, if you are an illegal migrant, first of all, you are less likely to be picked up by the survey and less likely to reply because let's face it, if you are illegal and trying to survive, you
Yeah,
have
why
other
would
fish
you?
to fry than
Right.
replying
Okay.
to
Okay, that makes sense.
so if you are a legal migrant, that's why I think we could have a decline in unemployment.
And if we see a decline in unemployment rate, then that kind of should seal 25 instead of 50, most likely.
Yeah, unless all the other data
Fine.
in the release
Yes.
shows that things are terrible,
Right.
which is very unlikely.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else for that people should be thinking about next week?
Yeah, I mean, we have a big speech from Chair Powell, and it will be a speech to the National Association of Business Economists. So we should get interesting questions. And I think, he's going to be expanding on his theme that all the risks are with, I mean, the risks are stronger with the employment side of the mandate than the inflation side. So it's an important speech, but I don't expect him to say anything new. I think, like us, he's waiting to see what the NFP print looks like. But in terms of signaling a change of regime, of economic regime, I think this print is really important. And then, of course, we have the elections, which is also going to be a big driver of the macro regime. So we have a few interesting weeks ahead of us.
Okay, cool. Anything else big for next week?
We will get, since this is the beginning of the month, we will get the PMIs. To be honest, I mean, the PMIs are not that related
Growth.
to GDP anymore. They are more a trading thing. This week, I published a note looking at the quantitative indicators of recessions. And one of the things that is very clear in the data, you can have a PMI below 50, especially a manufacturing PMI, and still be in an expansion. So I think it's more important for traders than for economists, quite
Right.
frankly.
Right. I know we say that every month, but but I guess people should be looking out because we have seen decent sized moves, especially if they're weak. I think if it's strong, it's probably fine, but if it's weak, it, it could be a reason for people to get spooked.
Yeah, they probably would. Though to me, the thing to get spooked about is the NFP, because if it shows that the labor market is getting tighter, I'm going to be less optimistic on inflation, and so will the Fed. Or the Fed, is going to manage. If there is any transition, they will manage it over several months and message it in such a way that we can't really disprove that they knew it all along and were prepared for it. Um, but I would get spooked
It's
by
spooked. Yeah.
a marked decline in unemployment, 20
Yeah.
basis points.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Awesome. Um, Thanks. The great week as always. It sounds like there'll be some waiting around, but obviously the markets always throw some interesting curveballs ahead of payroll. So wish you an awesome weekend and all of our clients a great weekend. And as always, as you always like to say, please send us any feedback. We'll have some, or rejoining people coming back in the fold next week, which is very exciting. Have a few kind of analytics that we're going to be releasing next week as well. So look out for that. We'll flag all that stuff. Yeah, and everyone have a great weekend.